How should you settle the biggest running back draft debates in your fantasy football 22 season? It's time to break it down right here and right now as you look at another position and decide who are the best values here for you on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We've got tons of content on the site, everything you could ask for, the traditional stuff that you need to dominate your draft, the rankings, the mock draft analysis. But we also have suggestions on your fantasy football team names and fantasy football league punishments. So anything you need, we've got you covered there on sportingnews.com. And here at Locked On Fantasy Football, we're going to continue our series of the key draft debates here in our fantasy football leagues in 2022. These are the tough decisions you need to make on the clock all across the board at the key positions. We're going to explore 6 such debates here at running back, including right off the bat, right after Jonathan Taylor goes number 1 overall. That's the unquestioned guy that you're going to take at the top of every draft that's not 2QB or Superflex. We're going to look at that battle between Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook and see that. And then Najee Harris and Joe Mixon, another good debate. And we'll get into 4 more also on this show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available to you on all platforms. All right, we will dive into the debates. We've got 6 to break down here. We teased the 2 big ones here. And this is in the first round. So we always want to make the best possible first round pick. Jonathan Taylor, no brainer, number 1. I've seen Christian McCaffrey on the board as the number 2 overall pick. We've documented here a lot on the Locked On Fantasy Football show that we're going to avoid Christian McCaffrey drafts. We just want to go down that durability, risk, and injury road here all season long. But we also talked about an elite tier of running backs here. So look at it. You got Jonathan Taylor. Then you got Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler is also in the mix, we know. And then look beyond that, Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb and some of the values there at running back when you get into the borderline first round and a 12-teamer into the second round. So things you have to weigh, and then you got to weigh those between the 4 wide receivers of choice here. That would be Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Stephon Diggs. So 8 running backs are first round worthy here. So we're going to break down 4 of them and see where you want to go when you're on the clock and want to make a decision between 2, because it could be the difference between winning your league and not. If you go with an injury-riddled or disappointing guy versus the tried-and-true producer here that you can get at the position. So looking forward to doing that here with Derrick Henry versus Dalvin Cook. Let's start there. This is a good debate here because Derrick Henry coming off the major injury, missed 9 games last year with a foot. He's had a lot of wear and tear. We know that. Big monster seasons he had before then. He's still a freak of nature, and he's physically incredible and can recover well to explode, much like we've seen with Adrian Peterson over the years. He's that type of runner. He's just a naturally gifted guy that he can go off, and he's still the bread and butter of what the Titans want to do. But things have changed with the Titans. The offensive line is a little bit suspect. They're sorting out multiple positions here. You also have a questionable passing game right now. Ryan Tannehill coming off a bad playoff performance. There's some optimism from Tannehill rebounding, but still most vacated targets in the NFL, resetting of the wide receiver core. And the tight ends, you have Treylon Burks and Robert Woods. And then you look at the situation there with the other weapons, there's not a lot. And we get it. Hassan Haskins is a pretty high-end backup here, but I'm just not saying that we want to invest that highly here in Derrick Henry. So we want to be buyer beware. I don't think he's a no-brainer number 2 pick. I know he's the leading rushing champion there after Jonathan Taylor of late. So he's been the guy, and then the injury happened, and then Taylor took over and took that crown away from him. But when you look at things overall with this situation, I do think there that Dalvin Cook is the better value right now. If I'm going to bang the table for one guy or the other, it's Dalvin Cook. And things have changed for Dalvin Cook in a positive direction. You have Kevin O'Connell, and they want to use him more as a receiver. That's been untapped. I think you also saw the big touchdown season he had a couple years ago. Dalvin Cook, I know, is a bit of a durability risk. He tends to miss games consistently, but I don't think Alexander Madison is that established big complementary number two, the way that A.J. Dillon or Tony Pollard are with the Packers and Cowboys respectively behind their backs. So Dalvin is a workhorse, and they want to treat him that way. We know O'Connell with the Sean McVay, they'd like to dedicate to one back. They just haven't had one back since Todd Gurley was in his prime and went down, and that was it. They figured out Cam Akers can't stay healthy, Darrell Henderson can't stay healthy. So that was part of the philosophy there, is that the Rams had to use different guys, including Sonny Michel last year. But Cook is clearly the number one, well ahead of Madison. They're not kind of interchangeable backs. We've seen that Madison has struggled quite a bit. I mean, he's still a worthy handcuff, but he's not a plug-and-play back there with Dalvin Cook behind him. And they have a little bit of depth. They have the rookie Ty Chandler there out of that good North Carolina running game, but it's still Dalvin Cook's backfield in the lead role. Yeah, that versatile pass catching role is going to be great. And they're still trying to figure out the number three receiving situation. They do like KJ Osborne. He's a holdover, but new coaching staff is like the rookie we talked about him, Jalen Naylor. Irv Smith maybe needed more to block a little bit as he settles in back at tight end. With Tyler Conklin gone. So some things to look at there with the Vikings here in 2022. So again, they have an uptick in their offense while the Titans have a downgrade that you can look at. So Derrick Henry, the age and injury says you can't necessarily go in that direction with Derrick Henry as much. I mean, the wear and tear and the cliff is going to happen here. He's getting older. Cook is still, I think, in his prime. You could have a Joe Mixon type season that Mixon had in 2021. I'm very high on that, just having a better offensive mind. And what did we have in common between these two guys? Zach Taylor came from Sean McVay. Kevin O'Connell came from Sean McVay. So there's some real parallels there with Dalvin Cook having a monstrous year here. And again, he's going to be the centerpiece with Justin Jefferson. That's one thing about the McVay offense. They feature the main dudes as much as possible. And we saw that. So Justin Jefferson would surprise me if he's the top scoring wide receiver in fantasy football. Absolutely not. He's getting somebody that helped Kupp have that season last year. And then Dalvin Cook, Todd Gurley, remember, he was the dominant force at one point with McVay. So there's a lot of parallels here. Cook can handle that kind of workload here. I think he's primed to do so. His brother getting a lot of buzz in Buffalo, James. So a lot of things to look forward to with Cook here. So Cook over Henry is my choice here if I had to have that choice there high in the first round when I'm looking for my RB1. Now, Najee Harris, there's an argument that he should actually go over Dalvin Cook, but I definitely would take Najee Harris over Derrick Henry, but would you take Najee Harris over Joe Mixon? Mixon has got an improved offensive line. Big season last year. Explosive Bengals offense there that he's going to be an integral part playing off Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and what they can do downfield also with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Mixon's going to have favorable running lanes. Everything lines up well for Mixon. He shook off any durability issues from early in his career. He's in his prime too, in that same wheelhouse of Dalvin Cook and the production there. So Joe Mixon can have a big year, but I think he's a little bit capped because the Bengals are still an open up passing team here. Hayden Hurst could pull for a few touchdowns at tight end. They've got some pretty good scores among their wide receivers. You also have Samaje Perine, who's not going to go away as a guy that they're going to give the ball to in some key relief situations here. So, and I don't think Mixon is going to be overworked by volume. They're going to be limited with him in terms of he's not going to be the workhorse where they're just going to say, we're going to give you the ball 25 to 30 times. They don't need to do that with how explosive their passing game is. He's more of a complementary guy when you look at pass to score, run to win type player. He's a good red zone guy. He can finish drives there, but Perine's a factor there. So you could have a little bit of touchdown regression for Mixon. While you should have positive touchdown regression, yes, that's a term that we use in fantasy football for Najee Harris. He's going to score more, folks, and he's an integral part of what the Steelers want to do. Now, some people look at Mixon being in the better offense with a tweaked line here and going in that direction, but you look at Najee Harris and the Steelers' role he's going to have. I think Kenny Pickett or Mr. Trubisky increase his role here. They're going to be able to throw the ball downfield a little better. Underrated interior line improvements they've made there. He's also going to dominate. There's no Samaje Perine. There's some good backup situations there for Harris, but it's a little bit more by committee. It's not one dedicated backup. Harris is going to get a high volume. He's got tree trunks for legs. He's extremely durable here as a young running back. So that's what I like behind Jonathan Taylor. I don't have that age and attrition that I have to worry about. Then you do have to worry about a little bit with Cook, Mixon, and Henry there. So Taylor doesn't miss practices. Harris has been pretty strong and sturdy here. They've been very careful in the preseason. Got off to a good start last year as a rookie. The touchdowns will come. I think they'll be easily double digits here. He's going to be a very key receiver as a check down guy for wherever's the quarterback as they look to short to intermediate, to whether it's Trubisky and his struggles out of the pocket to get the ball out of his hands, or Kenny Pickett checking down and getting Harris involved or leaning on Harris in the running game quite a bit. So, good. Dalvin Cook and Najee Harris, I think, just in general in these two debates versus Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry, respectively, that they just have a little bit more upside in their offensive situations, while the other two guys could fade a little bit. And again, you don't want to look too much to what happened last year. You're looking forward to what happened this year in fantasy football. A lot of people make that mistake, and I think, to me, Cook and Harris have more upside in these two situations. So I'm going Cook over Henry and Harris over Mixon as easy decisions here for me early when I'm looking at RB1 in fantasy football drafts in 2022. When we go to our next segment, we'll look at more borderline RB2s and get deep into the RB2s there, and then look at some younger backs there in our third segment that we're going to decide between in our fantasy football drafts in 2022. As we're talking about fantasy football, we know it's almost the start of the NFL season. We obviously love that time of year here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're so excited to bring you all the inside analysis you need. And if you're into sports betting and fantasy, and I know you are because you're watching and listening to the show, you need a competitive edge to win it. Another competitive edge, that is. You want every competitive edge. That's why I highly recommend the Elias Game Plan app. It's the ultimate sports betting and fantasy companion for the NFL and NBA and MLB. So you get it all in one here. Elias Game Plan is the only sports app from the most trusted name in sports stats. That's right. It's Elias Sports Bureau, the official statisticians of U.S. pro sports leagues, including, and first and foremost, the NFL. This app is really a one-stop source for player news and league-validated player stats and team records, expert game analysis for betting, building your fantasy team, and just impressing friends with debates in the bar. Perfect for preseason. You get player previews to help you draft a winning fantasy team and team previews so you know what to expect as the regular season kicks off. And you'll also get expert Elias insights from Elias Sports Bureau's research team here. They can't be beat there. Really, they do their crack work here to get the best numbers for you, the most relevant numbers for you to help you do well with your sports betting and fantasy football endeavors here in the 2020 season. Take my advice, just like you've been doing here on the show, download the Elias Game Plan app today with new features available all the time. Take your games to the next level. NFL season right around the corner, so don't wait. Find the Elias Game Plan in the App Store, the Play Store right now, and get going to have that extra edge during your sports betting and fantasy football season. All right, it is time to continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football and dive into some more draft debates. This is more of a borderline RB2 debate here as we slowly creep out of the top 12 and into the borderline of that, into the 13, 14 range here. Aaron Jones in one corner from the Packers and Saquon Barkley in the other from the Giants. So let's start with Aaron Jones. Now, we know what offense he's in here with Aaron Rodgers, and we know that he can have a big season, as pointed to by 2019 and that initial big season run-heavy attack with Matt LaFleur as they were adjusting and Rodgers was getting settled in the offense before winning MVP awards. So I think in general, the Packers offense is being discounted. It's still Matt LaFleur. He's a very good offensive line, still solid offensive line, good offensive system. And the running backs are going to have a bigger part, right? It should say that with Aaron Jones being a key receiver there. He was a key scorer, keep in mind, for Rodgers out of the backfield in 2019. That role should expand. He's the better receiver of the two between him and A.J. Dillon. Dillon is a capable receiver, but Jones is the more dynamic receiver. He's more the explosive runner. He's also the more reliable guy that you look at all over the field and can score his share of touchdowns, even though Dillon will cut it down a little bit. So I don't think you'll see the 19 or 20 touchdowns you get from Jones, but you could see 12, 13 easily there. The big numbers from scrimmage as we're used to from Aaron Jones. And again, having A.J. Dillon actually helps because it's going to keep him fresh and not to hurt him as much. Saquon Barkley, a lot is going to fall on him with Gary Brightwell and Matt Breida as the backups here right now for the Giants. They're going to put another heavy workload on Barkley. It has looked good so far, but with the injury history is looming over things in the Giants offense. Are they going to be as good and put their team to score and have as many opportunities as the Packers offense with Rodgers, with Daniel Jones? No, we do like Daniel Jones, some of the upside there. I think Jones is going to be passing a little bit more. I just don't trust Saquon Barkley to stay healthy. We've just seen it too much here in his early part of his career. That wasn't his rookie season. He had the torn ACL that he suffered early against the Bears that one season. So I just don't see Barkley staying healthy. I just think he's been worn down quite a bit. Remember, he had a key volume going back to Penn State. We've talked about this a little bit. If you get worn down a little bit in college, that it is just hard to kind of make up for that wear and tear. It just you're not going to just be eased upon. And it's been the lower body, the soft tissue stuff that's happened here. It's not like it's more linear injuries here. It's compound injuries here that are happening here with Saquon Barkley. Things that have just helped him break down a little bit. He's just been too tight and physical and powerful of a runner, and sometimes that can hurt you a little bit in getting hurt. So love Barkley talent when he's healthy, but that is one of the biggest ifs in fantasy football, right behind can Christian McCaffrey stay healthy? The second question is can Saquon Barkley stay healthy? We have too much evidence to the contrary to believe that it'll suddenly change here. So I just feel more confident Jones. I think you look at Aaron Jones, I think he could go easily in the top 8 in running back. I do like him as one of those potential first-round picks. So I would like him over Nick Chubb and all that. Chubb is pretty solid here. And if Kareem Hunt's moved, then Chubb certainly moves well ahead of Aaron Jones into his tier with those guys we talked about. Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon in our first set of debates here. So Aaron Jones, however you slice it, I like him and the production to be better than what Saquon Barkley will give you the season, and mainly durability is a big part. But Jones is no slouch. I mean, we look at Barkley, he might be the buzzy big name guy because of the New York and the talent, but Aaron Jones has been the better NFL back, and he's gotten rewarded on the field and is in a better offense with the Packers playing off Rodgers to do so. All right, let's go to another debate here. This is a pure, more RB2 debate. Ezekiel Elliott versus James Conner. This is a good one. In one corner, we have the Cowboys, the lead back, with Tony Pollard behind him, getting the receiving work and a few touchdowns. But Elliott, still a big touchdown scorer. He had the double digits to give him an RB1 status once again last year for the Cowboys. The Cowboys are high scoring offense with Dak Prescott. They lose some targets to Amari Cooper. They might run a little bit more. Talk about Prescott maybe running less to score in the red zone. So Elliott's still going to have plenty of those opportunities as the Cowboys actually improved offensive line and offense overall puts the team in position to score a little bit more. So bottom line, I think the Cowboys are going to be a better all-around offense yardage and scoring wise, and then the Cardinals here. So that's the way I think about it with Elliott. James Conner is going to see the touchdown regression for sure. He's not going to score 18 to 20 times again here in 2022. But there's no Chase Edmonds, Benjamin, and Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams can affect things a little bit because he's a good pass protection back, and we saw some good production in Kansas City last year. So not a slouch. They're going to give him some key targets. Connor, however, could be limited in the passing game a little bit. So Connor's going to have to get past Elliott to have that big scoring total and enough in the passing game to get it done. But I don't necessarily see it. I think Elliott here scoring is the easy path. And look, you score because you're talented and team wants to give you the ball in primo situations. I don't think it's valued enough here. It's not by accident. They're not random. Guys get opportunities in the red zone and to score. And Elliott has been that type of back since early in his career. So that's the thing. You got to get opportunity to score, to score. Connor will get those, but I think those might fall down a little bit. Rondell Moore could be a factor on little short, little pitch passes there that could happen here. I think Darrell Williams and Benjamin might get some power work at times to relieve Connor so they don't put everything on it. I don't think Edmonds is going to be a guy that they're simply going to say, okay, we're just going to give all these touches to Connor here this season. So I think that's what people are looking at. They're worried too much about Tony Pollard, but Ezekiel Elliott got it done with Pollard in the mix. Connor, I think, could fade a little bit here, and he's a little bit more of a durability risk. I mean, overall, Ezekiel Elliott's been very healthy since he got into the league. He had that 6-game suspension, but other than that, he hasn't really missed key time there in his career. So, and the Tony Pollard situation, much like A.J. Dillon with Aaron Jones, is keeping the veteran a little fresh here. And Connor, again, has his share of durability issues as well. Again, opportunity and scoring and yardage and all that favors the Cowboys, Prescott versus the Cardinals. And Murray, there, DeAndre Hopkins missing time. They're going to figure out some things. The passing game might not be as efficient moving the ball downfield. More competition for touchdowns where when they get in deep is going to be the guy of choice, continue to be that guy for the Cowboys. All right, there's another couple fantasy football draft debates for you that we broke down at running back. We will close the show looking at a couple more, including Cam Akers versus Dave Montgomery, and closing it with J.K. Dobbins versus Travis Etienne. So a little bit of Are we down too much on these guys? And are we high too much on these guys? Type of debates here to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. BetOnline.net is the fast and easy way to check in all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events, the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. And it's time for the games here. Week 2 of the NFL preseason, soon week 1 of the regular season come up. We want to get into the action. We want to go to our trusted source here, and BetOnline.net is going to give that to you. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, of course, NFL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be a top online resource for our sporting wagering information from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered this NFL season. Head to BetOnline today or use a mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football, looking at our top running back draft debates here. And these are the early parts as we dip into the deep RB2s here and getting into the flex spots. Cam Akers in one corner for the Rams, David Montgomery in the other for the Bears. This is our latest debate that we'll break down. Cam Akers, the injury outlook has been okay, but they're also looking at Darrell Henderson Jr. They need to maybe split it to keep both these guys healthy. Akers, the injury history just can't shake it. He missed most of last season. We know there's a total washout here. And we try to get piecemeal production from Henderson and Sonny Michel there. Dave Montgomery, new to offense here with Luke Gentry. We talked about Khalil Herbert having some explosiveness behind him. Not a lot of yards per carry there. Not a lot of juice in the passing game that we want. I mean, he's okay, good receiver, and gave us numbers there, but he has a limited ceiling. His floor is okay, but Khalil Herbert and a new offense and open things up a little bit, say we can go more in that direction. Now, but Akers is a real concern here because they are looking at Akers and Henderson as kind of co-number ones on this team all of a sudden. With the Rams, again, they're a little bit unpredictable. They can be fickle and give different guys different carries depending on who's healthy. Akers' limited injury issues in a short period of time in the league are concerning. Well, David Montgomery's been rather durable here. And Herbert is a special back and can be involved, but this Bears offense could have room for both these guys to be rather productive here as they lean on the backs here to help Justin Fields. Again, Akers and Henderson right now, you're chasing two guys that could split work, and you're not sure who's going to get hurt in that role. So I'm not a big fan of David Montgomery. I'm not going to take him too high, but I'm starting to lean David Montgomery here for this reason. Again, he's going to be available, and he's going to put up some points early. He could shift the backfield to point to kill Khalil Herbert, but here's how you solve that problem. You can get Herbert and Montgomery there versus Akers and Henderson can be a weird split where I think there's a potential where you'll have Montgomery, Herbert as your handcuff, and maybe Herbert takes over. Then you're covered either way with that Bears offense playing off the running of Justin Fields with the traditional running game, and also enough with the pass catching there to get some production. There you also look at the targets for the Bears. So you do have a lot of buzz over Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. And Bayless Jones is a good young receiver here. Bayless Jones Jr., the speedster from Tennessee, we talked about a reason that's a bit underrated for Justin Fields, Byron Pringle. But Montgomery's also kind of a dump-off guy that they can use quite a bit. So he's the default guy for now. He's going to give you value early season, but if you lock him up with Herbert versus going after Akers and Henderson, I think you're going to be in better shape this season overall, just with a more defined role and production and touches going to one particular guy, whereas there's a lot more injury unknown, where I don't feel that with Montgomery and Herbert, but you get it on both sides with Akers and Henderson here. So David Montgomery is the choice here over Cam Akers. It's a bit of an upset, because again, I'm not a big Montgomery fan, but that Rams backfield is just it's a doozy, and just must be some injury bug going through that, but they just can't keep guys on the shelf. Maybe you just go for Jake Funk late in drafts and hope for the best there with the Rams backfield. But Montgomery, at least there's some initial value there as we wait for the upside of Herbert to kind of cut into that a little bit. All right, finally, we'll look at the upside with J.K. Dobbins versus Chad Santian. Interesting debate for a couple reasons. These are secondary backs with some real special skills here. And you look at basically second-year backs in their roles here. And you look at the knee injuries, both coming off torn ACLs here, Dobbins and Etienne in the preseason of 2021. Dobbins in a good spot. We know it. They've got some different guys there. It's a high rushing attack there with Lamar Jackson. There's some upside, but there's not a lot of receiving potential here for J.K. Dobbins. You have Gus Edwards, a dedicated power back that's coming back from his own season-ending injury. You got other guys in there. You got Mike Davis. You got Justice Hill. You got Tyler Batty fighting for a role here as a rookie out of Missouri. So there's some guys that they could diversify the running game with that aren't their kind of default guys from last year, Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray. So there's some worry with Dobbins. Is he going to be ready for week one? He's kind of lobbying to be out there. The Ravens are being wary. They just want him out there for week one. It's going to be maybe a full-blown committee approach. You also have to worry about Lamar Jackson running in touchdowns here and cutting into Dobbins' total as well. Again, they had some big receiving plans for him last year. I just don't see that happening here with Andrews and Bateman and James Prochet and some of the other guys they have there catching passes. So I don't see that's only being a big factor in Dobbins' game. But for Travis Etienne, we know that's a massive part of his game. Going back to Clemson, he can catch the ball, check down, short passes. Trevor Lawrence is certainly comfortable throwing to him as his former college teammate. They won championships together. They were trusted back and quarterback together. So Etienne just looks good in the preseason. He just seems more dynamic there, and we've already seen it. While Dobbins has been a work in progress returning here. So Etienne also can be a pretty good power back. Also, where's the competition right now? James Robinson coming back from a major Achilles injury here that wiped out the end of his season. He's on a slower timetable in his recovery than Etienne, who got hurt in the 2021 preseason as a rookie. So there's all that in mind. It's a new coaching staff. They love the versatility of Etienne. He's looked good here. He was a clear leading back here for them so far in the preseason. They want to see more of him. So I hope we don't see too much of him because we don't want him to go down again. But Etienne, I loved him in college. There were some of Alvin Kamara qualities there from him. And Dobbins had a pretty good career at Ohio State, but he's been used to being a committee back, where Etienne was kind of the main fixture in that Clemson backfield for a while. And I think actually the time off from last year can be a good transition. So in the end, you tear your ACL and you don't get a chance to play. Dobbins, again, I don't know if the durability timeline is going to be as acceptable for the production we need in fantasy football than what we're going to get with Etienne. So again, the Ravens are the better offense, but they have more guys to feed, more sources of scoring in the red zone, more running backs that can do damage. Where look at the Jaguars, they're going to lean a lot on Etienne running and checking the ball down to him. And it's a very good offensive line. When you look at the Jaguars, too, they're built to run the ball pretty well. They have Cam Robinson, Brandon Sheriff, a good pickup there from the Commanders. And you got the rookie center, Luke Fortner. So good offensive line to help facilitate the running game. The Ravens also have improved their offensive line a little bit, but Etienne has less competition, better health on his side, and maybe a larger role. And that all adds up to taking Travis Etienne out of J.K. Dobbins in your fantasy football drafts in 2022. So there you have it. There is a good spot here for this running back debates here that we want to decide for you. So hopefully we did that. So to recap a little bit, we took Dalvin Cook over Derrick Henry, Najee Harris over Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones over Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott over James Conner, David Montgomery over Cam Akers, and Travis Etienne over J.K. Dobbins. That means tomorrow's show, we will look at the key wide receiver debates all across the board in your fantasy football drafts for 2022. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL as we break down the entire league from reality perspective, preseason training camp, all the stuff going on, all the buzz you need to know. They're the biggest stories across the NFL. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. We'll continue to give you advice to dominate your draft with our wide receiver debates broken down for you tomorrow. Have a good day, and we'll check you out on the next show.